3 weeks after the shocking first contact meeting, Council investigator Hana stood on the surface of Earth looking up at the blue sky filled with white clouds. She had volunteered for this mission because she was one of the best scientific minds in the galaxy. Her purple skin and 4 arms made her stand out among the humans, but they seemed curious rather than afraid. When they saw her, the Council had sent her with a team of 12 specialists to study human magic they expected to find hidden machines or secret energy sources, or maybe genetic changes that explained how humans could break the laws of physics. Instead, what they found was much more disturbing. Hana walked through the busy streets of Seoul with her recording devices, scanning everything around her. The humans went about their daily lives completely unaware that they were doing impossible things. A woman at a fruit stand touched a wilted flower and it bloomed fresh and bright. A man waiting for a bus made small flames dance between his fingers to keep warm. A child who dropped her toy simply pointed at it and it floated back up to her hands. These were not trained specialists or ancient masters. These were ordinary people using magic like it was the most normal thing in the world. The child could not have been more than 8 years old, but she manipulated gravity as easily as breathing today. Hana was going to interview 3 humans who had agreed to demonstrate their abilities. The first was Yuki, a young woman who performed on the streets for money. She could control fire in ways that made Hana thermal scanners go crazy. Yuki sat across from Hana in a small cafe, her hands wrapped around a cup of hot tea. "So you want to know how fire magic works?" she said with a smile. "It's not really controlling fire, it's more like asking the fire to dance with you." She held out her hand and flames appeared above her palm. The fire was real. Hana could feel the heat, but Yuki's skin showed no signs of burning. The flames moved in patterns that followed her thoughts, creating shapes of birds and flowers and stars. "Where does the energy come from?" Hana asked her recording devices, capturing every detail. Yuki looked confused by the question. "From everywhere," she said. "The fire is already there, in the air and the heat of my body and the light from the sun. I just show it how to be visible. Fire wants to dance, it just needs someone to ask it." Nicely. Hana's 4 arms moved quickly, taking notes. This made no sense. According to galactic science, fire was a chemical reaction that required fuel and oxygen and heat. The energy had to come from somewhere, but her instruments could not detect any power source in Yuki's body. The second interview was with Jin, an old farmer who grew the most beautiful vegetables anyone had ever seen. His farm was small, but it produced 10 times more food than it should have been able to grow. Jin led Hana through his fields, showing her plants that grew faster and healthier than should have been possible. "I just talked to them," he explained, placing his weathered hand on a tomato plant that immediately started growing new fruit. "I tell them they are loved and that their growth brings joy to people. Plants understand love better than most humans do." Hana watched her instruments as Jin worked the soil around his feet, showed increased mineral content. Nitrogen levels rose even though no fertilizer had been added. Plants that were dying suddenly became healthy and strong. Energy was flowing into the ecosystem, but from where Jin noticed her confused expression. "The earth wants to give life," he said. "It's not about taking energy from somewhere else, it's about helping things become what they already want to be. Everything in nature wants to grow and be healthy. We just help them." Remember how the third interview was the most disturbing of all. Myra was a healer who worked at the local hospital. She could cure diseases that even the most advanced galactic medicine could not touch. Hana had brought detailed scans of incurable conditions from across the galaxy, hoping to test Myra's abilities. Myra looked at the medical files with sadness in her eyes. "These people are suffering so much," she said. "Can you bring them here? I can help them." Hana explained that the patients were on different worlds light years away. Myra nodded and closed her eyes. She placed her hands over the medical scans and began to concentrate. Hana's instruments went wild as energy patterns unlike anything and galactic science began flowing through the room. When Myra opened her eyes, she smiled gently. "It's done," she said. "The man with the bone disease will wake up tomorrow without pain. The woman with the neural condition will find her memories returning. The child with the genetic disorder will grow up healthy and strong." This was impossible. Hana thought the patients were not even in the same star system. How could anyone heal people across space without any form of communication or energy transmission? Myra saw her distressed. "Distance doesn't matter for healing," she explained. Love and intention travel faster than light because they are not limited by space and time. When you truly want someone to be well, that desire reaches them no matter where they are. That evening, Hannah sent her daily report back to the council. Her findings were more alarming than anyone had expected. Human magic was not just unlimited energy manipulation, it appeared to operate outside the basic laws that governed reality itself. Humans could affect matter and energy across impossible distances without any detectable mechanism. The worst part was that magic seemed to grow stronger with practice and emotion. The humans she studied were not reaching some kind of limit. Instead, their abilities expanded the more they used them and the more they cared about helping others. A young street sweeper named Kai had shown her how cleaning magic worked. He could make garbage disappear and turn polluted water crystal clear just by feeling sorry for the environment. When Hannah asked where the pollution went, he said it became something useful somewhere else. Balance was restored but not destroyed. An artist named Sion demonstrated creation magic. She could paint pictures that moved and sang and even stepped out of their frames to dance around the room. When the performance was over, the paintings returned to being normal art, but the joy they had created remained in everyone who watched. A teacher named Bach showed educational magic. He could place knowledge directly into students' minds, not by force but by making learning feel like the most wonderful experience in the world. Children who had struggled with reading suddenly understood complex mathematics. Children who feared science began dreaming of exploring the stars. Every human Hannah studied accessed what they called the space between thoughts, or the breath of the universe, or the song that connects all things. They described magic as recognizing the connections that already existed rather than creating new ones. Her team of specialists was equally baffled. The quantum physicist could not explain how humans manipulated probability. The biologist found no genetic markers for magical ability. The engineer discovered that human magic worked equally well in vacuum or gravity or electromagnetic fields that should have interfered with any known technology. As Hannah prepared her final report, she realized that everything the galaxy believed about power and energy and the basic structure of reality might be wrong. Humans had not discovered a new technology or evolved a new biological capability. They had learned to work with forces that existed everywhere but that no other species had ever been able to perceive. If humans could heal across space and manipulate matter with thought and create energy from emotion, then what else might they be capable of? Could they move planets? Could they stop time? Could they reach into other dimensions or rewrite the laws of physics themselves? The implications were terrifying, not because humans seemed evil, but because they represented a level of power that made all galactic civilizations look like children playing with simple tools. Hannah sealed her report and sent it to the council. She knew that her findings would not calm their fears. Instead, they would probably make the situation much worse. The galaxy was about to learn that human magic was not just immoral by their standards, it was completely beyond their ability to understand or control. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 days without a break. Ambassador Kira sat in her designated chair watching as the greatest minds in the galaxy argued about what to do with humanity. Hannah's report had arrived 3 days ago, and it had changed everything. The humans were not just breaking the laws of physics, they were operating by completely different rules that no one understood. The council chamber was divided into 3 main groups, each with their own ideas about what human magic meant for the galaxy. The largest group was the Technology Alliance, led by the Mechanical Forge Masters. They believed that all advancement should come through hard work, research, and the gradual development of better tools and machines. Forge Master Prime Cole stood at his speaking platform, his metal body reflecting the chamber lights. As he addressed the council, for 10 million years his voice rang out like hammering metal. Civilizations have advanced through effort and sacrifice. We build machines that take generations to perfect. We develop technologies that require vast resources and careful planning. We follow the universal law that nothing comes without cost. He gestured toward the data displays showing Hannah findings. These humans violate everything we know to be true. They create energy from nothing. They manipulate matter with thought alone. They heal diseases across space without any mechanism we can detect. This is not advancement, this is cheating. Many Council members nodded in agreement. Species that had spent thousands of years developing their technologies felt that human magic made their achievements meaningless. Why should they continue to build careful machines when humans could accomplish the same things just by wishing them to happen? The second group was smaller, but just as passionate. The harmony collective included species that had evolved mental abilities like telepathy and empathy. Their leader was Songweaver Lyra, whose tentacles moved in graceful patterns as she spoke from her water tank. Brothers and sisters of the council, she sang her voice, creating beautiful harmonies that the translators turned into words. We have spent too long fearing what we do not understand. These humans have achieved what every conscious being dreams of. They have learned to touch the fundamental forces that connect all life in the universe. Her tentacles glowed with soft bioluminescence as she continued, human magic is not technology. It is consciousness made manifest. It is emotion and intention working directly with the building blocks of reality. This is not cheating, this is evolution. We should be celebrating humanity as the next step in galactic development, not condemning them for their abilities. The Song Weavers had spent centuries developing their ability to communicate through music and emotion. They saw human magic as a natural extension of consciousness, reaching beyond the physical limitations that bound other species. The third group was the smallest, but perhaps the most important. They were the neutral observer species that preferred to study and understand before making judgments. Their leader was Scholar Nex, whose crystalline form contained the stored memories of 1,000 generations. We are missing something fundamental, Nex spoke, his thoughts appearing as glowing symbols in his crystal body. Human magic appears to have a component that we have not fully investigated. Is not simply about power or ability. There seems to be a moral element that we must understand before we can make any decisions. As if summoned by their words, the chamber doors opened, and Day entered with another human. Kira recognized him as Te, one of the other members of the original delegation. The two humans walked calmly to the center platform, seemingly unaware that their mere presence made half the council nervous. Honored council members, Day said with a respectful bow, we have heard about your debates and discussions. We would like to offer a demonstration that might help you understand something important about how magic works among our people. Forge Master Coal Metal body clanked as he leaned forward. We have seen enough of your impossible abilities, human. What more could you possibly show us that would change our understanding? Tay stepped forward, his expression serious but kind. I would like to show you why human magic is self-limiting and why it cannot be used for evil without consequences. He raised his hands, and everyone in the chamber tensed, expecting another display of impossible power. Instead, Tay began to speak in a calm voice. Let me show you dark magic, he said, the kind that humans sometimes attempt when they are angry or selfish or full of hate. Dark energy began to swirl around Tay hands like smoke made of shadow. The temperature in the chamber dropped, and several species sensitive to emotional energy began to show signs of distress. The darkness spread outward, reaching toward the council members with tendrils that felt cold and wrong. But then something unexpected happened. The dark energy began to turn back on Tay himself. His face grew pale, and his hands started to shake. The shadows wrapped around his arms like chains, and he gasped in pain as the dark magic began to consume him. Enough, Day said quickly, placing his hand on Tay's shoulder. Immediately, the darkness vanished, and the chamber returned to normal, but Tay was left, breathing hard and looking exhausted. You see, Day explained to the silent council, human magic requires emotional truth. When someone tries to use magic for selfish purposes or to cause harm, the magic itself fights back. The universe responds to intention, and negative intentions create negative consequences for the user. Tay straightened up, though he still looked tired. I have been practicing magic for 20 years, he said, but every time I try to use it for anger or revenge or personal gain, it becomes harder to control. If I continued that demonstration, the dark magic would have eventually destroyed me. This is why we teach children that magic and morality cannot be separated. Song Weaver Lara tentacles moved in patterns of excitement. This is what we sensed in your energy patterns. Human magic is connected to consciousness, and consciousness includes moral awareness. Your abilities grow stronger when used for positive purposes and weaker when used for negative. One Scholar Nex crystal body pulsed with new information. This changes the entire framework of our analysis. If human magic is self-regulating through moral constraints, then our fears about unlimited power may be unfounded. But Forge Master Cole was not convinced these could be lies or tricks. He declared, "How do we know that humans cannot simply train themselves to overcome these moral limitations? What if they learn to use dark magic without consequences?" They looked directly at him. "That is impossible, sir. A human who completely abandons morality and empathy ceases to be human in any meaningful sense. They become something else, something that cannot access the connections that make magic possible. Magic requires you to care about the consequences of your actions on others to demonstrate this." Tay asked for a volunteer from the council. A young crystal being named Issa agreed to participate. Tay placed his hands near her crystalline form, and she began to glow with warm light. "I am sharing a small amount of magical energy with her," Tay explained. "But notice what happens if I try to use that same energy to cause harm." He shifted his intention slightly, and immediately the light around Issa flickered and died. Tay stumbled backward as if pushed by an invisible force. The magic will not allow itself to be used for harm against an innocent being. It recognizes the difference between help and hurt better than we do. The demonstration continued for an hour, with Tay showing how different emotions and intentions affected magical ability. When he focused on healing and helping, his magic was strong and precise. When he focused on his own glory or power, the magic became weak and unreliable. When he tried to focus on causing suffering, the magic turned against him completely. The council watched in fascination and growing understanding. They were seeing something that challenged everything they thought they knew about power. Every other form of energy in the galaxy could be used for good or evil purposes. Technology could build or destroy. Biological abilities could heal or harm. Psychic powers could help or hurt. But human magic appeared to be fundamentally connected to moral choices in ways that made it impossible to separate power from responsibility. As the demonstration ended, the three factions of the council looked at each other with new understanding. The technology alliance began to see that human magic was not cheating but operating by different rules. The harmony collective felt vindicated in their belief that consciousness and morality were connected. The neutral observers realized they had discovered something unprecedented in galactic history. But the arguments were far from over. Even if human magic was self-regulating, that did not answer the question of whether it threatened the balance of galactic civilization. The debate would continue, but now it would be based on evidence rather than fear. The humans had shown that their magic came with built-in moral constraints. Whether the galaxy would accept those constraints as sufficient remained to be seen. The massive space station Valdris hung in the darkness between two moons like a metal city floating in space. Ambassador Kira stood at the main viewing window watching the small human ship approach through the starfield. She had seen many first contact meetings in her long career, but something about this felt different. The humans had been sending signals to the galaxy for months, now asking to join the Galactic Council. Their messages were polite and humble, but there was something in their words that made her nervous. The other council members were already gathering in the ceremonial chamber. Elder Nera of the Crystal Beings was there with her body made of living diamond that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Commander Vex of the Iron Fleet stood nearby, his metal armor gleaming and his red eyes scanning everything for threats. The Song Weavers floated in their glass tanks filled with the special gas they needed to breathe, their tentacles moving in slow patterns that meant they were thinking hard. Kira had read all the reports about Earth and its people. The humans called their planet a blue and green world covered in water and land. They had built cities and machines and learned to fly between the stars just like many other species. But there was one thing in their files that worried everyone. The humans claimed they could do something they called magic. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had seen every kind of technology and every form of life that could evolve over millions of years. Some species could read minds because their brains had grown special parts. Some could control electricity because their bodies had developed the right organs. Some could even bend metal with their thoughts, but only after thousands of generations of careful breeding. Never had they met a species that could break the basic rules of how energy worked. A soft chime rang through the station, meaning the human ship had docked. Kira smoothed her blue diplomatic robes and walked toward the ceremonial chamber. The room was huge, with a high ceiling covered in stars that showed the position of every world in the council. Each species had their own section with chairs or tanks or platforms designed for their bodies. The center of the room was left empty except for a single raised platform where new species would stand to address the council. The great doors opened and the human delegation walked in. There were 5 of them, walking on 2 legs like Kira, but shorter and with pink skin instead of her pale blue. Their leader was a young man who had introduced himself in the messages as Day. He wore simple black clothes and had dark hair and eyes that seemed to look at everything with curiosity. Behind him walked 2 women and 2 men, all dressed in similar simple clothing. Day stepped onto the central platform and bowed deeply to each section of the council. The translator machines hummed to life, turning his words into the many languages of the galaxy-honored members of the Galactic Council. He said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, "I am Day, speaking for the people of Earth. We come seeking friendship and knowledge. We offer our skills and our friendship to all peaceful beings in the galaxy." Elder Nara leaned forward, her crystal body making soft ringing sounds. "We have read your messages, human Day. You speak of abilities your people possess that concern us. Show us what you call magic." Day nodded and looked around the great chamber. It was very dim because many species preferred low light for their sensitive eyes. Kira could see him thinking about something. Then he smiled and raised his right hand toward the ceiling. What happened next made every being in the chamber gasp or click or whistle in shock. Light began to flow from Day hand like water made of sunshine. It spread across the dark ceiling, turning into thousands of tiny stars that pulsed and moved in beautiful patterns. The light was warm and gentle, and it made the whole chamber feel peaceful and safe. But the council members were not peaceful. They were terrified. Commander Vex jumped to his feet, his metal armor clanking loudly. "Impossible," he shouted. "Where is the power source? Where are the energy converters? No being can create light from nothing." The song weavers began making high-pitched sounds that meant extreme distress. Elder Nara's crystal body was flashing red and orange colors that showed she was very upset. Even Kira felt her heart beating fast as she watched the impossible light dance above them. Day lowered his hand and the light slowly faded away. He looked confused by their reaction. "I do not understand," he said. "I made light to honor your great chamber. This is a simple thing among my people. Children learn to do this when they are very young." A simple thing. Elder Nara stood up, her voice ringing like breaking glass. "Young human, do you understand what you have done? You have violated the first law of energy. You have created something from nothing without any visible source of power." "But I did not create anything," Day said, still looking confused. "The energy was already there. I simply asked it to become visible. All things are connected in ways that you can feel if you listen carefully." The chamber erupted in noise as dozens of species began talking at once. Some were shouting, others were making clicking sounds or humming in deep tones. The translator machines could not keep up with all the different languages being spoken at the same time. Kira stood up and pressed the silence button, which sent a soft tone through the chamber that made everyone stop talking. "Human Day," she said, her voice careful and controlled. "Please wait outside with your people. The council needs to discuss what we have seen." Day bowed again and walked toward the door with the other humans. Just before he left, he turned back to look at the council. "I hope we have not given offense," he said. "We come in peace and friendship." After the humans left, the chamber stayed quiet for a long moment. Then everyone began talking at once again. "This changes everything," Elder Nara said, her crystal body now flashing yellow with worry. "In all our history, no species has been able to manipulate energy without some form of technology or biological adaptation. These humans appear to access power sources that we cannot detect or understand." Commander Vex was pacing back and forth, his heavy boots making the floor vibrate. "If they can create light from nothing, what else can they do? Could they destroy our ships? Could they break apart stars with their thoughts?" One of the song weavers made a low humming sound that the translator turned into words. "Their energy patterns were unlike anything in our database. The human showed no strain, no biological changes, no technology. The power simply flowed through him as if he were a living conduit to some unknown force." Kira listened to all the voices around her, each Species was afraid for different reasons. The technology users feared their machines might be useless against human magic. The biological adapters worried that millions of years of evolution could be made meaningless overnight. The psychic species were terrified that humans might be able to reach into minds and change thoughts directly. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted to welcome the humans and learn from them. Others wanted to send them away immediately. A few even suggested that humanity might be too dangerous to allow into space at all. Finally, Elder Nara called for order. "We will adjourn this session," she announced. "Tomorrow we will question the humans more carefully. We must understand the full extent of their abilities before we make any decisions about their future in this galaxy." As the council members left the chamber, Kira remained standing at the viewing window, looking out at the small human ship floating beside their massive station. Inside that ship were 5 beings who might change everything the galaxy thought it knew about power and possibility. She wondered if the humans understood how afraid they had made everyone, or if they knew that their simple light spell might have just started the most important debate in galactic history. The stars continued to shine in the darkness between the moons, silent witnesses to the moment when everything began to change. The planet Zarian hung like a dead rock in space, far from any inhabited systems. The Council had chosen this barren world as the perfect place to test human magical abilities without risking damage to important colonies or trade routes. Ambassador Kira stood in the observation dome, watching as the testing facility was completed below. Massive energy shields surrounded the test area, and recording devices pointed at every angle. 3 human volunteers had agreed to demonstrate their abilities. For the galaxy, June was a former soldier who specialized in what humans called combat magic. Yoon was a scientist who used magic to help with research and discovery. The third volunteer was Lin, a philosopher who claimed to understand the deepest principles of how magic worked. The testing had been going on for 2 weeks, and each day brought new shocks to the council observers. June had shown them how humans could create barriers of solid air strong enough to stop projectile weapons. He could launch bolts of pure force that could shatter rocks and bend metal. He could even make himself invisible by convincing light to bend around his body. But the most surprising thing about June was what he could not do when the council asked him to demonstrate lethal combat magic. He tried for hours without success. Every time he attempted to create magic that would kill a living target, the spells simply failed. "I do not understand what is wrong," June said, looking frustrated and confused back. "On Earth, my combat magic works perfectly. I can stop attackers and defend my friends, but here nothing happens when I try to hurt these test subjects." The test subjects were volunteers from different council species who had agreed to help with the experiments. They wore protective gear and stood behind energy shields, but even so, June could not make his magic work against them. Dr. Voss, the council chief scientist, had a theory. "Your magic appears to distinguish between defensive and offensive purposes," he explained. "When you were on Earth defending others, your magic worked because your intention was to protect. But here, where there is no real threat, your magic recognizes that any attack would be harmful rather than helpful." This revelation disturbed many council members. If human magic could somehow judge the moral difference between protection and aggression, then it was operating with a level of consciousness that they had never encountered before. And demonstrations were equally unsettling, but in different ways. She used magic to analyze alien technology that the council had never allowed any species to examine. She could look at a machine and somehow understand how it worked, even if it was built using principles completely unknown to human science. "Watch this," she said, placing her hands near a Forge Master quantum processor. The machine was one of the most advanced devices in the galaxy, and its inner workings were closely guarded secrets. Magic flowed from Yoon's hands in patterns of golden light that surrounded the device. The light penetrated the quantum processor, revealing its internal structure in ways that amazed even its creators. Yoon began describing components and energy flows that the Forge Masters had never explained to anyone outside their species. She could see how quantum particles were being manipulated and even suggested improvements to the design. "This is impossible," Forge Master Cole declared. "You cannot understand our technology without decades of study and the proper mechanical interfaces, but Yoon smiled gently. Magic does not need interfaces, she explained. When I want to understand something, I ask it to show me how it works. Everything in the universe wants to be understood. Magic just helps me listen to what things are trying to tell me about themselves. Her research magic grew stronger when she was motivated by pure curiosity. When she tried to use it to steal secrets or gain advantages, the magic became weak and unreliable. But when she genuinely wanted to learn and understand, her abilities seemed limitless. She demonstrated this by analyzing alien, biological samples and even examining the quantum structure of space itself. Her magic could peer into other dimensions and observe energy patterns that no instrument in the galaxy could detect. The more she learned, the more questions she had, and the stronger her magic became. But it was Lin who created the biggest crisis of all. Lin claimed to be a master of philosophical magic, which involved using spells to explore abstract concepts and universal truths. The council was skeptical until she offered to demonstrate something she called a truth spell. I can create a field where no lies can be spoken, she explained. Everything said within this area will be completely honest, whether the speaker wants it to be or not. This might help you understand our true intentions as humans. Before anyone could object, Lin raised her hands and spoke words in a language that seemed older than time itself. A sphere of clear energy expanded from her position, covering the entire testing area, including the observation platforms where the council members were watching. The effect was immediate and shocking. Forge Master Cole, who had been speaking about the importance of technological progress, suddenly stopped mid-sentence and his voice changed. I fear that humans will make our machines seem primitive and pointless, he said, sounding surprised by his own words. We have spent millions of years building our civilization on the principle that advancement requires great effort. If humans can achieve anything just by thinking about it, then what value do our achievements have? Song Weaver Lara tentacles moved in patterns of distress. We pretend to welcome all consciousness, she sang, but we have always believed that our empathic abilities made us superior to other species. If humans can access universal connections directly, we might discover that we are not as evolved as we thought. Scholar Next crystal body flashed with uncomfortable truths. We have been planning to eliminate humanity since the first contact meeting, he admitted. The council has 3 secret committees working on ways to either suppress human magic permanently or destroy Earth before their abilities can spread to other species. The truth spell continued to work as council member after council member found themselves confessing fears, prejudices, and hidden agendas that they had never intended to reveal. Some admitted that they saw humans as a threat to their own species' dominance. Others confessed that they envied human abilities and wanted to steal them for themselves. Elder Nara crystal form rang like a broken bell as she spoke against her will. We are terrified that humans represent the next step in evolution and that all our species are about to become obsolete. We would rather destroy them than face the possibility that we are inferior. The revelations continued for an hour as the truth spell forced everyone to confront their real motivations. Some council members were revealed to be genuinely curious about humans and wanted to learn from them, but many others harbored deep resentments and fears that they had hidden behind diplomatic language. When the spell finally ended, the testing ground fell into shocked silence. Lin looked around at the council members with sad understanding. I'm sorry, she said, but you asked us to demonstrate our abilities. Truth magic shows what is already in people's hearts. It does not create feelings, it only reveals them. The political crisis that followed was immediate. Several council members demanded Lin immediate execution for violating their mental privacy. Others argued that the truth spell had only revealed what already existed and that Lin had not actually harmed anyone. The different species' moral frameworks clashed as they tried to decide whether forced honesty was an attack or a service. Forge Master Cole was furious. This proves that humans are dangerous, he declared. They can reach into our minds and force us to reveal our deepest secrets. No species should have such power over others. But Song Weaver Lyra disagreed. The spell did not force us to have these thoughts, she pointed out. It only prevented us from hiding them. The dishonesty was already there. Lin simply made it impossible to maintain the pretense. Scholar Next crystal body pulsed with new considerations. This raises fundamental questions about the nature of truth. And privacy. If humans can reveal what we truly think and feel, then perhaps we need to examine whether our hidden thoughts and feelings are appropriate. The testing ground became a battlefield of ethics as different species argued about consent, privacy, truth, and the right to keep secrets. The humans watched the debate with growing sadness, realizing that their demonstration had caused more problems than it had solved. Ambassador Kira, who had remained silent throughout the truth spell, finally spoke. "I think we have learned something important today," she said. "We are afraid of humans not because they are evil, but because they force us to confront aspects of ourselves that we prefer to hide." The testing was suspended while the council tried to deal with the political fallout from the truth spell, but the damage was done. The galaxy now knew that several council species had been planning to eliminate humanity. The question was whether this knowledge would lead to better understanding or make the situation even worse. As the humans were escorted back to their quarters, June spoke quietly to his companions. "I think we may have just started a war." The Great Assembly of the Galactic Council had never seen such chaos. Elder Nara stood at the central podium, her crystal body flashing angry red colors as she addressed the packed chamber. The truth spell incident had shattered any pretense of diplomatic unity, and now the galaxy was openly divided about what to do with humanity. Representatives from over 200 species filled the massive amphitheater. Some species had sent warships to their borders, preparing for conflict. Others had begun secret negotiations with Earth, hoping to gain access to human magical knowledge. The careful balance that had maintained galactic peace for millennia was cracking under the pressure of this new reality. After 7 days of heated debate, the Council reached a decision that satisfied no one but seemed like the only way to avoid galactic civil war. Elder Nara's crystal voice rang out across the assembly as she announced the official ultimatum. The human species will be given one choice. She declared humanity must permanently suppress all magical abilities among their people using methods that can be verified by Council observers. In exchange, they will be granted full membership in the galactic community, including access to advanced technology, trade agreements, and protection under galactic law. The alternative, she continued, her voice growing harder, is permanent quarantine. Earth will be surrounded by automated defense platforms that will prevent any human from leaving their solar system. If humanity refuses both options, the Council reserves the right to take military action to protect galactic civilization. The chamber erupted in noise as various species shouted their approval or disapproval. Ambassador Kira felt sick as she watched the debate. Some council members were already calling for immediate military action, while others argued that the ultimatum was too harsh. Day had been brought to the assembly to hear the council decision. He stood quietly in the witness platform, his face showing no emotion, as the galaxy decided the fate of his entire species. When the noise finally died down, he was given permission to respond. "Honored council members," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I will take your ultimatum back to Earth so that my people can consider your offer, but I must ask you something. What has humanity done to deserve this treatment?" Forge Master Coal Metal Body clanked as he stood up. "You have violated the fundamental laws that govern reality itself. Human, your magic threatens the very foundations of galactic civilization. Every achievement, every technological advance, every evolutionary development becomes meaningless when power can be accessed without cost or limitation." They nodded thoughtfully. "I understand your concerns, but consider this. Every species in this council has abilities that others do not possess. The crystal beings can store the memories of their ancestors. The song weavers can communicate through dimensions. The forge masters can interface directly with machines. Yet no one considers these abilities immoral." "That is different," Elder Nara replied. "Our abilities evolved over millions of years or were developed through technology and effort. Your magic appears to have no source, no limitation, and no cost. It breaks the rules that keep the universe stable." "Then perhaps," Day said quietly, "the rules you believe in are not as complete as you thought. Perhaps the universe is larger and stranger than any of us understand. Perhaps magic is not breaking the laws of reality, but following laws that you have not yet discovered." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, and Day spent every day of it wondering how to explain the council ultimatum. To his people, when his ship finally entered Earth orbit, he could see the beautiful blue and green world spinning peacefully below, unaware that its fate hung in the balance. The emergency meeting of Earth leaders was held in Geneva with representatives from every nation and magical community on the planet. They stood before them in the same hall where humanity had first decided to reach out to the stars. Now he had to tell them that the stars had reached back with threats and ultimatums. The response was immediate, and angry President Chin of the Pacific Federation slammed his hand on the table. They want us to give up the most beautiful part of being human, she demanded. Magic is not just a tool for us, it is how we connect with the universe itself. Elder Song from the Korean Magical Council shook his head sadly. For 10,000 years, our ancestors have practiced these arts, passing down the knowledge from parent to child. Now aliens want us to abandon everything our culture has built, simply because they are afraid. A debate raged for hours. Some leaders argued that Earth should accept the ultimatum and join galactic civilization even without magic. The technology and knowledge they could gain might be worth the sacrifice. Others insisted that humanity without magic would not really be humanity at all. Young Mage Bo, who had become something of a celebrity since the first contact, stood up to address the assembly. I have a proposal, she said. Let us show the galaxy that we will not surrender our heritage, but that we are not a threat to them either. Her plan was audacious and beautiful. Magical communities around the world would cast simultaneous spells of protection around Earth, creating a barrier that would demonstrate both human power and human peaceful intentions. The shield would be visible from space, showing the galaxy that humanity was prepared to defend itself but would not attack others. The vote was unanimous. Within hours, magical practitioners from every continent began preparations for the largest spell ever attempted in human history. Children who had just learned to make light danced with grandmasters who could reshape matter itself, all of them working together toward a single goal. Bo stood on a mountain in Tibet. As the moment arrived, similar groups had gathered at power points around the world: in the Amazon rainforest, on the African savanna, in the Australian outback, beside the Arctic ice. Each group began the same chant in their own language, but with the same intention. The magic began as individual sparks from thousands of different castas, but quickly joined into streams of light that flowed across continents. Within minutes, the entire planet was wrapped in a shimmering aurora that pulsed with every color imaginable. The barrier was not solid, but it was real, a manifestation of human will and human unity that could be seen from anywhere in the solar system. But humanity was not alone in space. The Council enforcement fleet had been approaching Earth for weeks, preparing to impose the ultimatum by force, if necessary. Admiral Zorn of the Iron Fleet commanded 40 of the most powerful warships in galactic history, each one capable of destroying cities from orbitas. The human magical barrier formed around Earth. Admiral Zorn ordered his fleet to test its strength. Energy weapons that could crack planets fired at full power, striking the Aurora shield. The beams simply disappeared as if they had never existed. The barrier absorbed every attack without even flickering. Impossible, Admiral Zorn muttered, staring at his instruments. Deploy the quantum disruptors. Nothing can withstand a direct assault on atomic structure. The quantum disruptors were the most feared weapons in the galactic arsenal. They could tear apart matter at the subatomic level, making it impossible for anything to maintain cohesion. But when they fired on the human barrier, the weapons had no effect at all. The magic seemed to exist outside the quantum realm where the disruptors operated on Earth. Bo felt the attacks like gentle taps against an enormous wall. The magical barrier was not just a shield, it was a statement every human who had contributed to it was connected to every other human who had contributed. The spellbound Earth together in ways that transcended space and time. Admiral Zorn tried every weapon in his arsenal: gravity bombs that could collapse stars, temporal disruptors that could age targets to dust, reality scramblers that could make matter forget how to exist. Nothing worked. The human barrier stood against everything the galaxy could throw at it. As news of the failed attack spread through the galaxy, panic began to set in. Humanity had demonstrated that galactic technology was useless against their magic. The most powerful fleet ever assembled could not even scratch the defensive barrier of a single planet on Earth. The magical communities maintained their vigil. The barrier was not draining Their energy instead, it seemed to grow stronger as more humans added their will to it. Children born during the spellcasting seemed to be born. Already connected to the great working, the message was clear: humanity would not surrender their magical heritage, and they could not be forced to do so. The galaxy would have to find another solution. As Bo watched the aurora lights dance overhead, she wondered if the council would accept this demonstration of peaceful strength, or if it would make them even more determined to find a way to destroy what they could not understand. The answer would come soon enough. Ambassador Kira stood alone in her quarters aboard the council flagship, watching the aurora lights dance around Earth far below. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The entire enforcement fleet had tried everything in their arsenal against the human magical barrier, and nothing had worked. Admiral Zorn was talking about retreating and calling for reinforcements, but Kira knew that more weapons would not solve this problem. The galaxy was at a crossroads. Either they would find a way to coexist with humanity, or they would face an endless conflict with beings who seemed to operate outside the basic rules of reality. Kira had spent months studying human magic, and she believed she understood something that the rest of the council was missing. She activated her communication system and sent a message directly to Elder Nara, requesting permission to address the emergency council session. The response came quickly. The council was desperate for any solution that did not involve galactic war. The council chamber was filled with nervous energy when Kira arrived. Representatives from hundreds of species had gathered to debate what to do next. Some were calling for a full-scale invasion with every ship in the galaxy. Others wanted to abandon the human system entirely and pretend Earth did not exist. A few radical voices were even suggesting that the galaxy should surrender to humanity before they decided to expand beyond their own world. Elder Nara crystal body was flashing anxious yellow colors as she called for order. Ambassador Kira has requested permission to address this assembly, she announced. You have studied the humans more closely than anyone else. What solution do you propose? Kira walked to the central platform, feeling the weight of galactic history on her shoulders. What she said in the next few minutes might determine whether civilization would find peace or tear itself apart in an endless war. Honored council members, she began, her voice steady and clear, I believe we have been asking the wrong questions about humanity. We have focused on whether their magic is moral or immoral, whether it threatens our technology, whether it violates natural law, but we have missed the most important aspect of human magical abilities. She activated a holographic display, showing recordings from her months of observation on Earth. These images showed humans using magic in their daily lives, healing, helping, building, and creating. The displays focused on the emotional states of the magic users, showing how their intentions affected their abilities. Human magic is not like our technology or our evolved abilities, she continued. It requires something that we have forgotten in our focus on advancement. It requires moral growth alongside power development. Every human who uses magic must confront their own intentions and emotions. If they try to use power for selfish or harmful purposes, the magic itself prevents them from succeeding. The chamber was silent as council members watched. The holographic evidence recordings showed humans attempting dark magic and failing, humans growing stronger when they helped others, humans whose abilities simply stopped working when they tried to cause unnecessary harm. This is why their magic seems unlimited, she explained. It grows with moral development rather than being constrained by external resources. A human who truly dedicates themselves to helping others and understanding the universe can access increasingly powerful abilities, but a human who seeks power for its own sake finds their magic becoming weaker and more unreliable. Scholar Next crystal body pulsed with interest. This suggests that human magic operates as a natural safeguard against abuse of power. If true, then our fears about unlimited magical weapons may be unfounded. Exactly, Kira said. The magic itself prevents humans from becoming the kind of threat we have been imagining. But this also means that human magic operates by moral principles that are different from the ethical frameworks we use for technology.